Hello, BookTube. Well, as you can see, I have yet another guest. This is Brock from The Active Mind. I'll leave a link to his channel down below. Care to say hello to my imaginary BookTube friends?
Hello, hello. Yeah, I was gonna say that I feel like you've had a little spike in interviews yesterday. I was listening to both with Christopher Russell and then with Pat and Hannah. And I kind of felt that after your conversation with Pat and Hannah about, the female experience in BookTube, you're like, well, who's gonna be the kind of quintessential inversion of that? And you're like, oh, I'll get Dude Bro Brock from Active Mind. So
Yes,
I guess
I
I'm
needed
here to be the
someone.
spokesperson for that side of BookTube.
I needed someone with the heavy black cow crap ring.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the tattoos give authority to the masculine side of things, but
Plus, our having a video chat today allows me to finally say something to you on camera that I've never got to say before. Привет, друг.
Привет, товарищ. Да.
Uh, and naturally, you mentioned my conversation. I had a for those of you who don't know, only watch Brock's channel and don't watch anybody else because you've got fanatic fans.
Of course.
I did a video chat yesterday with Hannah from Hannah's Books and Pat from Book Chat with Pat, and we talked about the man problem, not only in the world but on BookTube and in books. So it seemed natural that you and I, being bastions absolutely dripping with testosterone, to talk
Of
about the
course.
woman problem.
Well, you've called me at such a weird time too. I just mentioned this to my wife. Believe it or not, the two books I'm currently reading are both from female authors. So I know you'd be gobsmacked at that fact.
Well, that's not possible.
Lies.
What are they?
So actually, one of them is reviewed, I want to say a month or two ago by your friend Sam Sachs. It's called The Remembered Soldier by, I'm going to butcher it, but like Agnete Danya, something like that, a Danish woman. So far, I'm enjoying it, but it's kind of like a very complacent amount of enjoyment. I guess it's steady so far. I'm about 220 pages in, so I don't have too much to say about it to describe it, but I'm reading that. And then I just started today The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector. And I'm only like 20 pages in, although it's a short book, so it's already like 25%. But I'm already like enthralled by her writing. She seems right up my alley as far as a very like cerebral writer and more like ideologically or philosophically focused than plot or even character driven. But again, it's just a taste of her writing. 20 pages isn't enough to give a full kind of synopsis on her style or ability, but enjoying them.
Right away, I have a whole bunch of things I want to ask you about, but I am omnivorously curious. And right away, you bring up something that makes me want to ask you just a couple of questions before we get back to the chick problem.
Yeah,
There's a huge chick problem. They're all over
of,
the place.
of
But
course, of course.
before we get to that, you mentioned so you are reading that first book because of a Sam recommendation?
No, actually, I'd never heard of the publisher. The publisher, New Vessel, if I remember correctly, direct messaged me. It was kind of funny. Usually, I've reached out to a number of publishers to request a review copy, but they randomly sent me, which I don't think they followed me, but it was weird. They randomly sent me their post about the book publishing that day to my Instagram, and I like responded. I said, "Oh, like looks interesting." I checked it out a little bit, and they said, "Would you like a review copy?"
Ah,
And I looked at it closer and I was like, okay, like very interesting situation. You have this soldier returning from World War One. His wife is trying to find him. They're kind of rekindling this love. It seems psychologically interesting. And so I said, like, what the hell? I'd like to do more and more reviews this year. And this seems like a nice new release, which I feel like, dig into new releases. So actually, they reached out to me in a sense, a little bit more informally. So that's how I heard about it. And then the first review I saw was Sam Sachs review.
so they sent you the book.
Yes.
Okay, so hypothetically, if you were interested in a brand new release and the publisher did not send you the book, would you ever buy something new from a bookstore or would you get it from a library?
It's actually a great question. I don't think I've bought any new releases, I want to say ever. The one exception might be a reprint, which sounds crazy, I know, but bear with me here. It might be the reprint of Blinding by Mircea Cortorescu from Archipelago Books when they reprinted that. That would be the only case I can think of. But for the most part, everything on my shelf is usually bought as either like a new, maybe a reprint or new print of a classic, or I've really confined myself to only buying like used books lately. Really, I guess generally. So yeah, I guess no would be the answer.
No, definitely not. And are you an ebook reader?
A little bit. Truthfully, the only books I read on ebook, one was, as you know, because it should be published in, I guess, a month or so, but Shot and Throw. That was given to me a digital, or given to me. It was arc, digital arc given to me for review, and that book comes out in like a month. So I kind of had to read it by that because they did a very small print for physical arcs. And then I read Sudba Chil no Sud see if I can remember. Sudba Chilovieka. The Fate of Man, I believe is what it's called, by Mikhail Sholokhov. Very short story. I'm not sure if you've read it, although I know that's always a foolish thing to assume or ask you. But I actually read that for I was helping out in this Russian survey. These students, and I believe St. Petersburg, were trying to gather some Americans and other countries as well to watch World War II stories, read a World War II story and watch a World War II movie, and then kind of gauge the perspective of Russians watching that in English. Basically, comparing and contrasting the perspective of World War II from a Russian or an American perspective. So it's very, I'm going on a tangent. So yes, like two times have I read an ebook.
What about audiobooks?
No, my wife continues to push me hard to do that because she's a big audiobook listener, but no, I don't really have an interest because I feel like audiobooks lend a hand to multitasking, and I feel like if I'm multitasking, I'm not giving the book the appropriate attention.
Now, with your wife constantly pushing you to try audiobooks, have you contemplated the alternative of denying her permission to speak to you?
Yeah, of course. No, no. But she has very different reading, of course, interests than me. I think I've discussed that with you before. But even like habits wise, are very different. Like she's almost exclusively new releases. As I mentioned, uses her Kindle all the time. She has Kindle Unlimited and uses that to its full extent. She does audiobooks all the time. And this year we did an exchange basically, and we did another exchange currently where earlier this year I gave her The Master Margarita, and and in exchange I read the second book of Sarah J. Maas's series. So the second one is, I think, A Court of Mist and Fury. Uh, Neither of us loved the books generally. And then recently, I read A Man Called Uwe by Frederick Bachman, who I believe you have an affinity for his writing. And then she's currently reading The Bell Jar and not fully loving it, but getting along with it.
Where I naturally want to know, where do the two of you get these recommendations?
Well, I'm just trying to pick out books that I think she might be willing to play along with versus if I were to give her, I don't know, some drab Russian story or um, I don't know. I try to pick something that's maybe a bit more middle ground as I can. For example, The Master and Margarita, as you know, is very fantastical. It's very theatric and does have, I think, a strong female character as well. And so I thought that she would like those components since she reads a lot of fantasy and things of the like and romance. And then what she chose for me, Sarah J. Maas is just one of her favorite series because it really got her into reading. And then Bachman, just because she loves his work. He's one of her favorite authors, and she's mentioned that he is able of portraying characters with a lot of dimensionality and depth. And she thought that the types of writers and writing I like, he would be up my alley. And I think he was. I really did enjoy that work.
So, have the two of you ever absolutely agreed on an absolute home run of a book?
No, no.
No, that's never happened.
I'm losing hope too. Yeah. We
Goodness.
did both read Pride and Prejudice, but I had much more of a rewarding and engaged experience than she did, I think.
You liked Pride and Prejudice more than your wife did.
I know. I'm not living up to the dude bro expectation here.
No, I'll say not. I don't know if you saw just earlier today, Michael K. Vaughan did a hilarious video where a viewer of his challenged him to read Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, damn.
And he's going to do it for Jane Austen July. but he decided to make high comedy out of it, and it's just gold.
I'll have to check it
Absolute
out.
gold. And the problem is that I haven't checked, but I would be willing to bet that at least a third of the comments on that video will think that he's being completely serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but okay,
Common sense isn't so common now, so you kind of come to expect that.
no, no, yeah, I've learned this lately that comedy is not so common anymore. I think there's a whole mind frame now that's been in place for probably 5 years that doesn't even recognize comedy when it sees it. I
Yeah.
don't really understand that. I won't go off on a tangent about it. But moving from, okay, so there's been a partial but not a complete meeting of the minds with your wife. What if we move
Mm.
on to other women?
The women?
The women. Do
The
you,
women.
for instance, know anything about the analytics of your channel? I would assume that you have no female viewers.
No, I actually have a decent bit, and you know what was most shocking was when I started my Patreon earlier this year, I think like half of the people in my book club are women. Which it's not that like I don't, it didn't stun me in some way, but I figured it would be more masculine. I figured most of the books I chose would lend a hand more towards a masculine audience, but I feel like a stronger female base than you'd expect. Yes.
And what about your viewing on BookTube?
The viewing is kind of the same. I mean, it's
Actually,
predominantly
I don't
men,
actually
but
know. Do you watch a lot of BookTube?
as far as like who I view,
Well, yeah, you have a wife, you have a job, you have little
no,
ROI on
I
the
watch,
way, little return on investment is on the way.
yeah. No, I watch a decent bit of BookTube. I definitely watch Hannah's Books videos. I subscribe to Book Chat with Pat as well. I definitely watch them. I'm trying to think of some others. There's
You occasionally give a pity watch to Christopher Russell.
yes, I give it after you've let him out after organ harvesting him
I
last
did my
weekend.
best, but he was
Yeah,
still physically able to drive back to Ohio.
yeah. Fortunately, you let the hedgehog free, so I do watch him from time to time. And there's a few.
And David Murphy, he must
Oh,
have been
I love David Murphy's videos. Yeah,
his
and
last
he
video.
was
He
all
showed me his
trapped
back.
out in his
Yeah,
last
he was all
video.
trapped out.
Yeah. I know. I was like, we're gonna have to have a lift off, us three now. But yeah, so I do a decent bit of watching. Yeah.
Uh, by us three, I assume you mean me.
Yes, yes, of course.
Good, because when it comes to lifting, I think Christopher would be defeated by the vending machine.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm being mean to it.
He'll be all right.
So okay, so that's your Patreon and your Patreon's book club, which sparks a whole bunch of other questions. Well, I can hold those off for a minute. But what about the rest of the BookTube world? Do you
Yeah, that's what I'm
do you watch more men than women?
I do watch more men than women. I don't think it's an intentional thing, although I think it's natural just to go to those voices that you at least assume ostensibly they read the similar kind of books as you do. Uh, but it's not like I mean I've you don't read most of the books that I read, or at least generally. Christopher Russell doesn't really read, with the exception of Russian history. He doesn't really read the same kind of books that I do. Pat and Hannah certainly don't either. So I honestly am watching a lot of channels that don't share the same interest as me. There's a few exceptions here or there of people that will read either a Russian novel, or they'll have kind words, believe it or not, to say about Infinite Jest or some of these different writers, or Rubenet to readers that may concern. He was the one who pushed me to read Laszlo Krasznahorkai, who has turned out to be, I would say, in my like top 10 authors, just because he has such a distinct writing style. Uh,
Yeah, it's so
so
distinct.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Hmm.
completely distinct. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
His books are great. He contractually stipulated that even the workers in the warehouse must not be female.
Yeah,
Books have never
yeah.
been even touched by a woman,
He,
much less books.
he probably would fit in Dude, bro. His female characters
Probably.
are quite that way. Yeah,
Even Ruben can occasionally fail.
yeah, yeah. We're all human. Yeah.
So, so, okay. So most of the you do watch some channels that don't agree with you thematically. So
Yeah,
it's not just
certainly.
you and right conscious throwing
No,
it out all day long.
first of all, you'll be happy to know that I don't subscribe to him, nor have I liked his content.
You
I
two
don't
are
have negative things
practically
to say
separated
really,
at
but
birth.
no.
You're full of surprises today.
I know, I know. I'm like a
So,
Trojan horse. On the outside, I look all, tough, mean, and masculine. On the inside, I'm just soft.
so what about do you do other book related social media? You mentioned Instagram, for instance.
Yeah, I've been a lot more active, I'd say, in the past 7, 8 months with my we call it Bookstagram, Instagram, whatever. And I try and it's similar content, but I try and kind of either provide shorter book reviews or I'll kind of reference and link people to the Substack. I'll discuss what I'm currently reading. I recently did some giveaways on there. I'll obviously kind of have recommendations like, okay, 3 books, whatever, plug and play kind of things. But I try and be active there. And actually, that's one thing that I thought I'd mention. And if we got on the topic of kind of booktube communities, is so speaking of the women, there's there's large cohorts of booktube that don't know we exist. Of course, you've said that many times. There's the sci-fi and fantasy male channels that are, they only read that, and then there's female channels that are only reading book talk stuff or romance or romantasy and things of that nature. And my wife reads more widely, but she is more on that corner than this corner. And one thing that when we've talked about booktube community is that her level of not just with her channel, but what she sees, the engagement and connection between viewers and content creators and just all that isn't nearly as strong as we have here.
Oh no, no,
It's
nowhere close.
not nowhere near versus I'm constantly, comments, emails, messages, and it's such a small but very close-knit community. And that's why I feel like I've not only felt it very encouraged and supported, but I feel so welcomed and excited to engage because of that.
Even though I'm mocking you all throughout the video.
Yes, of course.
I'm such a horrible host.
It's all in jest.
You feel welcome and embraced anyway.
Yeah.
I have friends in those other
Stockholm syndrome.
communities, especially the tech bro community.
Hmm.
And I just a couple of weeks ago, I was messaging back and forth with one of those an old friend. I mean, we were friends before I started a booktube channel, and he's extremely wealthy from his
Hmm.
channels. And I offhandedly mentioned that I wouldn't be messaging as much in the coming week because a friend of mine that was also a viewer of my channel is coming over to stay. And he was
Hmm.
horrified. He was horrified. Unironically, he was warning me that I was going to be murdered.
Uh,
It would never cross their mind to allow that kind of intimacy.
you
Never.
should have told him Christopher Russell can't hurt a fly.
Well, he well, I don't know about that. But he drove here, uh-oh. Are we frozen? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. This is bad. There we are. You're back. I I'm assuming I froze
There
for
we
you.
are. I'm back.
Well,
I'm
we're
back.
having minor tech problems
You
here.
did freeze, but I'm back now. I see you. Yeah,
Pretty obvious who is to blame for those tech problems. The last
of
person
course.
mentioned. But yeah, that kind of community is unknown, as far as I know, anywhere else.
Yeah.
Even the communities that like to play up their warmth and inclusiveness, like a lot of the craft communities,
Mm.
it's it's an atmosphere that they are building with their words on their channel, but they definitely don't act it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely don't do that.
Yeah. It's more
So that was,
affectation than reality.
yeah, it's what Jason Harrigan, he of blessed fame from long gone from BookTube. He always used to say, "Book people are the best people." I think
Yeah.
he was largely right. Uh, but so you surprised, I'm sure everyone who's listening by saying that the two books you're reading right now are both by femoids.
As far as I can tell, yeah.
What dictates that process of what you pick next? I mean,
Well,
is that
actually,
dictated by your book club?
somewhat. So coincidentally, next month we're also reading a woman. We're actually reading Toni Morrison, A Song of Solomon. But No, generally, what I'm reading right now, I just felt that since it's still a fairly recent release, I wanted to try and tackle it sooner rather than later. So that's why I'm reading The Remembered Soldier. And then with Liz Spector, I was actually going to dig into some different short stories or some other works. I kind of have a little pile of books I've been meaning to kind of get to sooner rather than later. The reason she jumped up the queue is because in my last video, I had mentioned that she's a writer I've been adamant to read this year, and I've heard nothing about great things or nothing but great things. And I had a gracious and very generous subscriber send me the book. And so I always feel obligated to pick up that book sooner rather than later. And especially if I've been, screaming her name, I have no excuses. It's in my hand, so that's why I started it. Yeah.
And that's another thing that's extremely unusual about our little community
Yeah.
here is that tympanic membrane is just it's Swiss cheese. We
Yeah.
send things to people, they send things to us.
Yeah.
I know the bigger book to the YouTubers that I know, when they get mail from fans, they practically have the police open it.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
acknowledge it on camera. They don't deal with it at all. They never interact with it. They certainly don't return it.
Yeah.
Return the favor. They don't do that.
Yeah.
Uh, so you don't know what your next books will be? Which,
No,
which
I
comes
got a
to book
little
club?
stack over here that I mean, here's the tricky thing. I'll make videos on it in a few weeks, but before we started the recording, I was telling you how I'm moving soon and I have to pack up all these books. And the tricky thing while we're moving in between houses and staying with family is I kind of have to essentially pack a box of books for the rest of the year that I'm going to read. So with that in mind, I'm obviously keeping in mind the kind of books I have planned for the book club, but I'm also, I mean, that's only like four or so books planned versus I'll guess I'll read maybe another 30 to 40 before the end of the year. So I have a little stack over here of different works that I plan to get to sooner rather than later. Yeah.
Naturally, the Brattle shopper in me wants to know if your interim housing is close to good used bookstores.
Oh, yeah, no,
Viewer
there
in
are
me is
some
also
decent,
the
yeah,
booktube
there's some
viewer in me
decent.
is also wondering about that because I want you to vlog it if you are.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm definitely going to. I already we mentioned Bookstagram earlier. There's two actually people that live in. I'm going to Richmond, Virginia for reference, and there's two people that live over there near my hometown that I met through Instagram, and we already planned to do a bunch of I basically call it like a bookstore crawl instead of a bar crawl, and go to a bunch of the stores in there or around there. So yeah, I will inevitably be buying as well. So I'm keeping that in mind as far as what I pack. Uh, so yes, I will certainly be sharing that and vlogging that. And I'd like to, depending on how everything shake out, holidays, newborn coming on the way, I'd like to get up to Hyde Cottage in the spring of next year. But we'll see. Only if you let me leave, like Chris Russell, slowly crawled out.
I'm just hoping. I mean, you're the avatar of youth and health, but I'm just
Yeah.
hoping that you are willing to, when in Rome, eat like the Romans when you're here.
Oh, of course, of course.
Your body will complain, but your taste buds will not. It's
Yeah.
delicious food. It's just really bad for you.
How many calzones can one man eat? We're gonna find out.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I hope so. Oh my God, a trip to the Brattle. Have you ever been to the Brattle?
I have not. I have
You ever been
not.
to Boston?
I've not been to Boston. I'm a big Red Sox fan, and my dad always wanted to take me to Fenway. So I have a curiosity of Boston, but no, I haven't been.
Fenway's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I used to go by it every single week, several times. I used to go by it. I'm when Boston had a lot more used bookstores. So now I'm trying to rack my brains to remember the last time I was in Richmond and what the used bookstore situation was like. I seem to remember there was one that was a tradition. It was old and established, and it was pretty good. Once you're used to the Brattle sale
Hmm.
lot, everything feels overpriced. But
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember the name of it. It was one of those weird fusty names, like two last names. So it might be long gone.
There's a few good ones, and there's more what do you call it, corporatized ones like a Second and Charles that do the job. So there's a handful that'll keep me satisfied for the time being. But I will miss the one that I usually go to here in Colorado Springs that I've loved and found a lot of gems at. And the few trips I've gone up to Denver, they have magnificent bookstores. There's one that you really have to get on the ground. You're pulling out books off the ground to look in the corners, and I found so many rare books I never thought I'd imagine. Authors I've been, scouring, the globe for basically at those stores. So it's been nice.
But we're running out of time and we still haven't addressed the woman problem.
I know.
I assume you said you do Instagram. I'm assuming you don't do book talk.
No, I hate TikTok. I've never gotten on it. I've gotten on it like once or twice. It's just degenerate content on, an endless loop. So no, I think there's only so many social media platforms that can deprive me of my humanity. So I've stayed off.
Well, the book area of TikTok, book talk, is just offhandedly renowned for how vapid it is, how utterly ridiculous it is, how it's the same six books, how it's just people overacting for the
Yeah.
Emmy,
Yeah.
not a stitch of honesty at all. And everything that I've watched of it confirms that in my own mind. And then
Yeah.
just recently, Jack Edwards made a video saying that book talk really isn't that bad. It really isn't shallow or superficial. And I was saying aloud to the screen, you saying this is not
Coming from the horse's
helping.
mouth.
No,
Yeah.
it's not helping things at all.
Yeah.
You should, if you
Yeah.
wanted this to be said, you should have hired somebody else to do it instead of doing it yourself.
Yeah.
And yet, authors love it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it helps with sales a lot.
If your backlist title goes nuts, as Madeline Miller said, you wake up and you're a millionaire.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. I think I agree with a lot of the book talk critics who say that all of those viral flash popularity things don't actually lead to people reading books. It's just,
No. No. And honestly, like there's such a I don't know, there's such a push behind like the excitement of buying a book. And I think it's almost more of a symptom of the times as well, where you see this in other, I don't know, sectors of life where people are more after like the sensation of buying the thing or doing the thing or going to the thing or posting that you're at the concert rather than being at the concert, actually, losing yourself in the book. It's more like look at this cover, look at this list, getting the nice pretty backdrop with the books behind you. And unfortunately, it's seeped into the book world, but I think it's just another factor of life at this point.
I have in the little book room a beautiful background entirely full of books. And every single viewer of my channel has said, nope, we prefer this one. We
You want
prefer
the
this
Bean and
back.
Erasmus.
No, you are not allowed to move, just in case she decides to go up there and show off.
Yeah.
But so what about the woman problem? If you do, I mentioned this yesterday with Pat and Hannah. If you look for the BookTube newbie tag and you just call it up on YouTube and go back a week, you will see 900 women and one man.
So I agreed with you about that. I'm not the biggest booktube consumer, but it is my assumption and my experience that there are far more female channels. So I think some of the channels that were offshoots of booktube and bookstagram. So you have to kind of keep that in mind that I think there is a lot more uh I don't know, there's a lot more of a push, I think, for the women reading community right now is more fervent. There's more verve within them to kind of create content to read the same books. They're more communal. Men are increasingly, I think it's overstated, but it's also heavily understated, this whole like male loneliness thing. But I mean, the data I think supports it that I mean, of course, less and less men are reading, but the communal aspect within men, especially post college, I think is dwindling. So if you kind of factor that in as well, you think, okay, well, if they're not engaging and having book clubs and having a book community and wanting to read and discuss these things, let alone, especially when it comes to fiction, this lack of empathy and stuff, all of that. I think there's multiple factors essentially that lend to women being more inclined to engage in book communities, booktube, create content. That would be my guess. And also, if you're booktube as a man, I think I would guess the leading genres are self-help, business, and I wouldn't even say philosophy. I would just say stoicism. If that's all you got, your
Yes. So
channel might be limited.
just stoicism and not real stoicism, cod
No,
stoicism.
no, of course not. Of course not. It's stoicism and principles leveraged to get materialism and like sensual pleasure, which is quite contrary to the
I
principles.
always want to say, I do often say that to the screen. If you, the version of stoicism that you've made a 10-minute video about has the ultimate goal of making you money, it is not
Yeah.
stoicism, and you don't understand what you're talking
But
about.
they never see the
No,
irony of it,
never
unfortunately.
see it.
So it's
No,
our inside
the,
joke of this.
the B roll is always, the premium brand coffee or the car
Yeah.
or whatnot.
Yeah.
And the thing, I mean, not to go off on a stoicism tangent, but the thing that just cracks me up every time I watch one of these silly cod stoicism channels, the first thing I think was, if you had even one kidney stone, you would be a puddle on the floor. You don't know the first thing about dignified suffering. Not the first thing. One little kidney stone.
But I took an ice bath.
Yeah, yes. Well, okay. I was ranting that years ago, saying this is really bad for you. This is really, never mind, it's a fad. It's really bad for you. And hot cupping on your back is quackery. It does nothing. It is not medical. It's not medicine.
Yeah.
Probably also is really bad for you. Certainly bad for the skin on your back. Did anybody listen to me? No. And why? Because I don't have the cow crap ring.
Yeah. Yeah. They all one ring to rule them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas you're practically Jared Henderson.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I just need the beard, put on
Yes.
the dad hat,
Yes.
and I'll be.
The dad hat and the extremely soft focus background.
He does keep it quite soft, doesn't
Yeah.
he?
You never know what's lurking in that background there. You'd never
Yeah.
know. You'd never be able to tell. It's so gauzy. So I asked, and I think we got deflected. Do you know, roughly speaking, the breakdown, men versus women who watch your channel?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's like 70-30 or 75-25.
In favor
Of men, of course, yeah.
that's okay. The fewer
Could
chicks, the
always be
better.
improved. It's not up for me to decide.
God. Oh my God.
That's the perfect way to end it.
This is the risk we always run, is that she's going to start to act
The
up.
star.
Baby, what are you doing? Want to go over there? Huh? There you go.